Welcome back, listeners, to Whimsical Node. Get ready for a thrilling journey as we dive into the concluding chapters of Enemy Me, where secrets unravel and the fight for humanity's future truly begins. In these final chapters, the investigative team, including Rick and Barbara, continues to piece together the truth behind the mysterious explosion at the Taylor building. They uncover crucial, yet strangely corrupted, evidence that points not only to the bomber's identity, but also to a deeper conspiracy involving modified DNA. Their forensic discoveries lead them to a seemingly ordinary diner, which holds a surprising connection to the unfolding events. Meanwhile, more Pete clones are brought into the world, each one awakening to a bewildering reality and a physical transformation that sets them apart from the original. They grapple with their new identities, choosing their own names and facing unexpected challenges related to their appearance and even gender. Despite these profound personal changes, they begin to understand their collective purpose: to confront Forrest Taylor and expose his controversial Transgenetics drug. They learn that the widespread use of transgenetics, while promising radical change, could lead to an alarming future for humanity. This realization culminates in a tense confrontation where the clones, now united, challenge Forrest directly, revealing their knowledge of his experiments and the drug's hidden dangers. This leads to the dramatic public exposure of Forever Life's illegal activities and Forrest's subsequent downfall. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the path forward will be forged by those willing to fight for it. Don't miss out on the full story. If you enjoyed this summary, please like this video and subscribe to the Whimsical Node channel for more captivating tales. And for the perfect soundtrack to your adventures, remember, a version of the theme song is available now on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, YouTube Music, and many more music streaming services. Just search for the artist group Whimsical Savages and their debut album, Echoes in the Void.
I look in the mirror and I see the thing that scares me. The face looks back and I know it's me, enemy, me, the one I fight, looking through many eyes to make things right. I watch over my many selves, planning to attack the one self, dying again and again and again, only to awake and begin from the end of a self. Oh, I'm my worst enemy, fighting myself to win myself. It's a fight I have to win, not just me, but for humanity. Losing is not an option, it can never be. The self that wants change, the self that wants fortune, the self that wants power, the self that wants control, the self that hates itself. With the rest of myselves, we work together to win. The self is lost, victory is ours, not just the self, but for all selves. Humanity will change, but not into a self. My enemy, me, is the self, the one who lost, with the others found. We won this round, forever life is our self.
Chapter 15. Thompson sat at his desk reviewing a new case. There was another bombing, but this time no one was hurt. The division suspected a local militia, the Libertarians for Independent American Rule and Security. Barbara had a possible lead, but he dropped off the radar. Thompson was about to open a face rec file when there was a knock at the door. He looked up. Yes? One of the desk sergeants was holding a small delivery box. Thompson, something for you. Thompson got up and took the box from the sergeant's outstretched arm. Feels fairly heavy. The sergeant nodded. Deep scan gives it an okay, but we have the carrier in hold until you check it out. Thompson nodded and sat down at his desk. He pulled on the release tape and the box opened. Wow. Something interesting? Thompson drew out a long whistle.
I'll say. This is a pretty big solid state. Maybe a quad of storage. Either this is overkill, or I'm gonna be here for a while. Let the carrier cool off for several hours. Pretty long time.
Thompson turned the empty box over several times.
No return tag, QR code, or bar address. Not even a printed indent.
The sergeant nodded again.
Yeah, the main reason he's waiting. How long can you hold him?
The sergeant nodded.
Hold him. 2 hours tops. Okay, thanks. It'll be an hour to depth the thing. I can't imagine someone sending such an expensive hardware for a couple of pics.
He sucked in his lips.
2 hours, then.
The sergeant closed the door on the way out as Thompson pressed the intercom button on his console.
Team, we got a mystery. A new game is afoot. Alonzi.
Forrest read the report. A second time. Someone hacked the system last night. Luckily, nothing of value was stolen, but it was annoying. Forever Life's closest competitor tried regularly to hack the system and regularly failed. Once they managed to breach the firewall, they found a back door through a new employee. He was fired, of course, but the damage had been done. They had been in the system for a week before security spotted, quarantined, and deleted the plant. But this time was different. This hack, it was discovered, had inside help from a plant that had been in the system, from what the report said, for years. It lay dormant all this time, through numerous updates and upgrades, until it needed to open a doorway for the hack. Forrest turned and faced the window. A reflection of himself showed a man frowning deeply. He thought it had to have been the work of Pete. Who else would have this kind of patience? He tapped at the intercom icon on his desk.
Troy, step into my office, please.
A moment later, Troy entered. He walked the long distance from the front door to Forrest's desk.
Yes, sir. Have a seat, please.
Troy swallowed hard. Mr. Taylor never invited him to sit.
Is everything okay, sir?
He said while sitting. Forrest smiled. He liked Troy. Of all his assistants, Troy was the most capable, beyond his wildest dreams. The man, who could easily have started his own company and succeeded well, had several degrees. He composed himself well as he faced Forrest. Troy knew a lot of his secrets, but not the uber ones.
How are you with a gun?
Troy slowly took a breath. Is Mr. Taylor going to ask him to do some wet work?
Oh, most high goddess, he thought. I'm good. I have master shooter status with a 10 mil short nose.
Forrest nodded and smiled.
Good. How would you like to get out into the field more often? Sir, you may ask anything.
Forrest tilted his head back.
Anything?
His smile widened.
You're not completing the sentence tells me there is a line.
Troy slowly nodded. He swallowed hard. Forrest laughed, and Troy nervously joined him. A moment later, Forrest cleared his throat.
How are your fighting skills?
He knew the answer, of course. He knew everything about the man, including past, present, and possibly future lovers.
Aikido, sir. Instructor level. Have you ever maimed anyone? Never, but I'd never been given an opportunity. What about killing?
He hesitated a split second.
In self-defense, I can live with that.
Forrest pressed.
And offensively?
Silence hung in the air awkwardly. Forrest repeated the question.
And offensively?
Troy cleared his throat.
I don't know.
Forrest raised an eyebrow.
Really? You've never thought about it? I've thought about it, yes, but to actively...
Forrest leaned back in his chair.
And?
Troy took a deep breath. Was he being interviewed? Near terror gripped his heart, but he managed to not show his distress. At least he hoped it didn't show. Forrest waited. He could see the turmoil splashed across the man's face. Troy finally said,
I would have a problem with that, but I'd get over it, eventually.
Forrest nodded, but didn't smile. Troy noticed and added,
There are incentives to help accept things that are unpleasant. Sir, am I being interviewed for a position change?
Forrest smiled.
Yes. How do you feel about that? The fact that we are talking flatters me.
He cleared his throat, but immediately wished he hadn't.
I'd like to think that you value my service. I do. Hence, here we are.
Troy nodded.
Would you like to know the position?
Troy nodded, and suddenly it dawned on him.
Bodyguard.
Forrest nearly laughed.
Very good. I'll be venturing out into the public soon.
He shrugged.
And I'll need someone with a cool head to watch my back, so to speak.
Troy frowned.
Why not an SU? I'll need a human handler. Our security units are the best money can buy, but I need a human supervisor to judge, ultimately, when not to shoot.
Troy thought about that.
I understand, sir. Will this be full-time?
Forrest nodded.
For the moment, you'll continue your duties as my assistant. When I need to venture outside, off the radar, you will accompany me. I'll let you select your replacement when time comes for you to be fully engaged in your new position.
Troy nodded.
Think of it as an extension of what you do now, but with added benefits, perks, and pay. I understand, sir. When do I start? Now. I won't be touring the city yet, but that shouldn't stop you from getting a Mark 10. Draft up the necessary paperwork and I'll sign it.
Troy nodded.
Thank you, sir. What are you doing tonight?
Troy pursed his lips, shook his head.
Nothing, sir. Good.
He held out a business card. Troy took the card and looked at it. It read, Bichard and Hernandez Security Tactical Group.
Ms. Bichard will be sending someone this afternoon to see you. Your training starts tonight.
Troy nodded, picked up the signal that the meeting was over, got up.
Very good, sir.
Forrest watched Troy walk the length from his desk to the door. Seconds later, he was alone again. He reached into a small drawer located on the inside of his desk. He hadn't used the mobile phone for over a year, but the battery indicator showed 100% charged. He took a deep breath and pressed the call button. Only one phone would ring. George gave it to him 3 years ago. He had wanted to destroy the thing, but nostalgia and a lack of true friends kept him from doing so. The last time he and George parted hadn't been on the best of terms. They negotiated for months, exchanged data, findings, notes, then a disagreement. He wanted the last couple of steps to cloning. George wanted the last datum on transgenetics. Neither of them would budge. They both parted in the worst of terms. A stinging, bitter taste that lingered for months. In the end, George stepped up his espionage, which cost him a life. He had his top tech geeks try and trace the signals, but it was nearly impossible. There had been 25 hops to a supposedly dead cell tower. Ironically, it was located across the street from the Forever Life building. Tracing the wired path proved fruitless, as there had been no less than 30 repeaters and over a dozen cross-connects across the city. Cutting off one connection took down an entire block. Unexpectedly, the ringing stopped. A robotic male voice said,
Forrest, it's been a long time. Hold, please.
Forrest recognized it to be Mike's. Forrest subconsciously answered,
Of course. Thank you.
He felt a rush of emotion, raw, intense stream of loss. He considered George more a friend than an adversary, but such was the way of business. One clamped down on weak feelings and embraced the emotions and thoughts that allowed one to succeed.
Was that the way it really should be?
Kent thought it interesting that Pete used a dining table for the conference room. It was an extra-large Stickley Highlands double-pedestal dining table. The dark brown oak top was scratched heavily, but Pete decided to never make any repairs. He had it sneaked in, through one of the many special entryways, under the cloak of darkness some years ago. One of the more noticeable scratches was caused by the move. Now Kent found himself strangely fixated on the table's top. He looked up I noticed everyone else except Becky staring at the same spot, the one made during the clandestine move. The others looked up too, and the room filled with a slow buildup of nervous laughter. LP Pete said,
Seriously, this is kind of creepy.
Strawberry Pete said, Are we going to do this forever? Tall Pete spoke for the first time.
Probably so.
He chuckled.
And the reactions we'll get.
Black Pete said,
What am I thinking?
Without hesitation, half the group said,
Rumpelstiltskin.
while a fourth said,
Let down your hair.
the rest said,
Maleficent.
Kent said,
Do or do not.
Black Pete,
Rumpelstiltskin has it, but I did think let down your hair first and had a flash of Angelina in Maleficent.
LP Pete said,
Still creepy, but interesting. Are we starting to think differently from one another?
Strawberry Pete said, Kent, you said do or do not. Episode 5. I can't say I wasn't thinking Star Wars, especially the Clone Wars, which is ironic by itself. Is it because you've been out the longest that you're thinking differently? Kent shrugged and said,
I wouldn't say I'm thinking differently, just maybe on a different thought track. But it's looking like divergent thought is beginning, and that is a good thing. Explain, please,
Asian Pete asked.
The fact that you're asking that question means you are diverging.
Asian Pete looked around.
Who else thought that question?
Tall Pete raised a hand. So did Pete 7 and Teenage Male Pete.
I understand the process,
Teenage Male Pete started.
but am I comfortable about it?
He shrugged.
It's only been a day, and I'm afraid I'm gonna lose everyone here.
Everyone in the room nodded. Kent said,
Can anyone guess what I'm thinking?
The two teenaged Petes stood, looked at one another, and laughed for a moment. In unison, they said,
Can we read each other's minds?
Kent smiled.
Creepy is a good word.
He pointed to Tall Pete. Tall Pete said,
What?
Strawberry Blonde Pete said, LP Pete said,
I?
Black Pete said,
Doing.
Nervous laughter spread through the room. Pete 8 said, Here. Then silence. Prax entered the room. He held a mobile phone in a hand and walked toward Kent. When he was within reach, he stopped and held the phone out to Kent. Kent swallowed hard. This was it. This was the answer to, what am I doing here? He looked around the room, all earnest faces on him now. He took the phone and put it on speaker. Clearing his throat, he said,
Pete 6 speaking. Brother Forrest, we never met.
Forrest's voice projected out past the tiny speakers.
Hello, Pete.
Kent clicked the volume to its loudest and said,
6, please. Pardon? Pete 6. I'm Pete 6. Forgive me, Pete 6. All is well, I hope.
Absently, Kent nodded.
Quite. I'm very comfortable these days, though not quite in the lap of luxury you're accustomed to.
There was an audible sigh.
Pete 6. I'd like to call a truce.
Kent lifted an index finger to his lips.
One calls a truce when one worries the tides of war are not turning from one's shores.
There was a long pause.
You have George's memory.
Kent smiled.
I've enough, Forrest. I've enough.
Another long pause.
I'd like to discuss our future. Ours, as in you and me. My future is looking very nice. Is there a Pete 7? Waiting to be woken up? Huh. I can honestly say I am truly the last of the Pete Walkers, Alpha. Then you see a future of nonviolence. I see a future with a world not on a path to incest or sterilization. Our figures tell us otherwise, and
Kent exploded.
are wrong. We've gone over this.
Kent laughed.
You and George have. I reran his figures and completely agree with him. You're gonna doom an entire generation of most of the world for money. Pete 6, please. This is not how I wanted to rekindle contact with family. I just want to talk. Talk then.
A pretty loud sigh.
Not over this thing. Face to face.
Kent remained silent for a moment. He yawned and looked at his nails.
Are you still there? I am. And back. Damn you. Please.
Kent smiled.
The lotion. Tomorrow. Day after. I have something to do tomorrow. Day after then. Lunch. Yeah, after 1 would be nice. You pay. 1 bodyguard, no security units. Not acceptable. I hope your bodyguard is sweet to look at or can hold a conversation. A bodyguard, then. 1 human. A human and 1 android. That'll be a table for 3, then. Your android eat meat?
After a pause.
Okay. 1 human bodyguard. But I must have a security team nearby. You got to grant me that. Please. There's a shopping mall about 5 blocks away. 1 vehicle, park them there. Agreed. I'll know if you have more than 1 and if they are not there. How would you possibly... Alpha, stop. My terms, or you enjoy eating lunch with your bodyguard.
Kent ended the call before Forrest could say anything else. Only then did he allow himself a moment to exhale. He looked around the room. All eyes were on him. LP Pete said,
Fuck.
And laughed. The others joined in. Kent blushed. Forrest nearly threw the phone across the room.
The arrogant fuck,
he thought. He totally dominated the conversation, controlled the conditions, and dictated the terms. He was better than George, and that worried him.
I can honestly say I am truly the last of the Pete Walkers, Alpha.
Odd.
Last of the Pete Walkers.
Forrest placed the phone back in its secret spot. He pressed the intercom icon on his desk.
Troy.
Yes, sir.
Has Miss Bichard's rep contacted you? Yes, sir. I'll be visiting their training facility at 7. Very good. Take the rest of the day off, then. I'm going home. Is everything all right, sir? Well enough, but...
He let the sentence linger.
Understood. Personal mode or autonomous? Autonomous, please. Unit 3 will meet you in the garage, sir.
Subconsciously, Forrest nodded.
Very good.
He clicked off.
I can honestly say I am truly the last of the Pete Walkers, Alpha.
Forrest thought.
That is a message to me. But what does it mean?
Chapter 16. Pearl. I want to be known as Pearl, Strawberry Blonde Pete said. The image of Strawberry Blonde Pete displayed Pearl as the caption. Kent asked,
Anyone else?
Pete 7 said, Call me Megan. Her new name appeared under her picture. LP Pete cleared his throat.
Marty for me. Morgan. Call me Morgan.
Black Pete said.
Jackie.
Asian Pete said. Everyone in the room turned and looked at Jackie. Becky said, What's wrong with Jackie? Everyone laughed. Kent said,
Dude, as in Jackie Chan?
Jackie smiled and shrugged.
Jet would have been too obvious. And Bruce.
Tall Pete yelled,
Is my choice.
Jackie continued,
Which is better than Morgan Freeman?
Morgan replied,
Or Marty McFly.
More laughter. New names appeared under each picture until only 2 Petes, the teenagers, were left. Both looked up. They had been whispering between the 2. Teenager male looked at teenager female.
Me or you?
Teenager female said, Sequenced. He nodded, took a deep breath, and said in German accented English,
Hi, my name is Hans.
And I'm Gretel, she said in an equally bad German accent. Kent facepalmed himself while everyone laughed. Marty turned to Kent.
So, father.
Kent interrupted.
Of which I'm not sure I like.
Pearl said, No choice, father. Kent groaned. Gretel spoke up. Okay, we'll only call you father in private.
Except for Gretel and myself,
Hans said.
We can get away with it. Okay.
Kent gave in. Then he laughed. It was slow at first. One hardly realized he had been laughing, Then it crescendoed rather quickly. Becky cocked her head. What's so funny? Kent took a deep breath and relaxed. His eyes watered as he smiled. Becky asked, "And?" He looked up and over to Pearl. She smiled and said, "Mother." Becky smiled. "I'm a lot younger than you think."
Oh,
Kent said. He scrunched his face up and thought hard.
Becky, I don't know how old you are. Now that is odd. Didn't George know?
She answered. Her grin turned sly. I needed to keep some secrets. Brunette Pete, now named Carrie, said, Guys, the plan?" Kent nodded.
George had worked out a plan years ago, but he only wanted to do it as a last resort. In a way, he didn't want to wake you guys up. Why?
Jackie said.
Do I really have to explain?
Jackie thought about it.
I suppose not. We are not what we expected to be. I'm warming up to the idea of not being Middle Asian, I guess.
He frowned.
No, I'm not warming up to the idea. As a matter of fact, I'm mad as hell. Pete fucked us in one way or another. This face I see in the mirror is not me.
Morgan nodded.
I agree. I think we all agree. How in the hell am I supposed to act?
He suddenly looked exasperated.
I'm black, and I have a whole lot of baggage I'm not ready to deal with.
Pearl said, Deal with? Not ready? At least you are still male. She stood up. What about us? She gestured toward the 3 women next to her and over to Gretel. You want a life event change? Wake up a girl. She sat down. Gretel said, Wake up a girl in her teens. What do we know about being female? You guys can fake it pretty easy. When I last went to the restroom, I stood frozen for several minutes, wondering, how am I going to pee? Sit down, you say? I got too many programmed years of standing up. How long will it take for me to realize standing up in a restroom is not an easy option? How long will it take for me to automatically wipe away instead of toward? And dear God, what happens when I have my period? Cry me a river, huh? I'm with George. I got no choice, but damn, this daydream is really a nightmare with the lights on. The room fell silent. Kent nodded, sighed, and said,
I got a chunk of George's memories. That part is strong. He really thought Pete Prime was a motherfucker for doing this. I agree. And I have to say, I am fortunate. I am still white. I also had to learn that white is no longer an advantage in the world. In 2031, whites became a minority in America. And what a slap to the face that had been. One day we're atop, the next we're a reluctant, forced bottom. White was no longer right. That was about several years of cold water in the face to wake up. So, I got my own adjustments to do. Not nearly as rough as everyone else, of course, in this room, but I do get it. And that's the bleed out. But we do have the option to settle the score with the big picture now.
He stabbed his right hand index finger toward the ground.
And later, we can deal with the personal traumas.
Bruce asked,
Father, we hear you. I hear you. What do we do?
Kent looked around the room. Sullen and determined faces looked back.
After we do this, success or failure, we walk away. Really?
He nodded.
Absolutely really. This is the last stand, but it doesn't have to be in a blaze of muzzle flashes. We do it and we move on. How many of you want to spend a short life fighting a behemoth?
No one said anything.
I don't want to die, and I think that comes from the fact that there'll never be another Pete lookalike again. You guys are proof of that. George saved his memory. He knew I would awaken and would source his memory. He knew there was another him coming. I don't have that luxury. Everyone that matters is awake now. The big guy?
Marty offered. Kent replied,
Is doom ma uck up gettin'.
He shook his head.
He scares me, and that's the option I don't think I ever want to pick. We can't pick Alpha's building. Wait, do they even pick it these days?
Becky said, It's still allowed, but you need a special permit. Marty continued,
We can't pick at Alpha's building with signs saying evil monster.
Kent replied,
We can, but we can do something better. Like what?
Morgan asked. Kent smiled.
Think about it. We all have the same base gene.
The room remained quiet for a moment. Pearl laughed out loud. Kent said,
That's one. Who else?
Marty looked around the room. All his brothers and sisters were in deep thought. Kent said, "Same base gene." Marty repeated the phrase a dozen times in his head. They were all related, but the world didn't know that. How could they? He smiled and laughed out loud. Bruce noted that half his brothers and sisters laughed and giggled. How easily they figured it out. Maybe? He knew what transgenetics did. So what was the connection? Same gene base meant related, yet how would the world know they were related by a common gene? We have the same last name. Huh. The world doesn't know that, he thought. Early experiments and unofficial trials? That would be unethical. He looked Kent in the eye. Kent smiled and nodded. Silently, he mouthed, "You figured it out." Bruce nodded and gave the biggest smile he could muster. The world would see forever life as unethical, careless, and callous. Profit and greed above public safety interest. Unsanctioned early human trials. How many laws would that have broken? Maybe the uggin bastard, Pete Prime, had figured it out early, or he was one goddamn lucky sumbitch. Brilliant. Kent said,
Transgenetics is entering human trials. George figured we can expose Transg as evil just by presenting ourselves as early clandestine drug recipients.
He let that linger in the air. Marty stood up.
Wait, what? We expose ourselves? Are you saying... Wait, I get it. DNA testing could show that our DNA had been altered to a common DNA and...
Jackie stood up.
Exposes humans to eventual inbreeding.
Megan said, "In the very near future." The group spontaneously started laughing. Becky cringed. They all had the same type of laugh. Every one of them. Ugh. No, that was double uck and then some. Chapter 17. Rick and Barbara walked into the Lotion. It was unusually crowded for this time of day. Sarah greeted Rick with a warm smile. She walked over and brushed her hand over his. He smiled.
Hey, Sarah, you look nice.
She blushed. Thanks. Barbara puffed her cheeks out as if about to throw up. Love buds. Ah, yes. I remember the moment. Pleasant. Hey, Sarah, I'm hungry. She looked around. Got a table for us? This place is crowded. You guys ran some ad on the local stream? Sarah shook her head. No, but man, has it been busy. Nearly everyone here is trying a pastrami on baguette. Barbara said, Seriously? Is it really that good? Sarah nodded. It is. Mel's outdone himself. He uses the best baguettes, which we are fast running out of. Fresh romaine, tomatoes, white onions, and pastrami sautéed in olive oil, chopped green onions, and chopped garlic. She started walking to an empty booth at the far end of the diner. It started picking up this morning around breakfast and hasn't let up. We got a few couples who had breakfast, left, and came back for lunch. Rick whistled as he sat down opposite Barbara.
Sounds like tourists.
Sarah nodded. Most of the folks are shopping the mall. 3 said some friends told them about the Lotion.
Good friends,
Rick grunted. I'd say, Barbara replied. I think I know what I want. She puckered her lips and smiled. Rick said,
But what about food?
Barbara launched a kick at Rick, whose legs were not there. He laughed and kicked back. He felt her shin and was satisfied he probably gave her a bruise. Barbara barely flinched. She lowered her head and squinted her eyes. Rick swallowed hard, turned pale, and thought,
Oh shit, I'm doomed.
Barbara smiled, satisfied that Rick got the message. Sarah coughed. Are you 2 secretly married? This is what happens when partners work together for years. Rick said,
Sarah, I think I'll be hanging out with you for a while. I need a witness.
Barbara gave Rick the middle finger. He'll have a pastrami baguette, too. Hold the onions for him.
Hey,
Rick interrupted.
I think I can order my own.
Barbara turned her head towards Sarah. Sarah nodded. No onions for Rick. She smiled and walked away to place the order. Rick watched as Sarah approached the kitchen door. He noted how her skirt hugged tightly around her hips. Tiger, down. Barbara joked. Rick slowly tore his eyes away from Sarah as she disappeared behind the kitchen door.
What?
Barbara smiled. You two getting serious? His smile was faint. Approvingly, Barbara nodded. Good. I noticed you stopped consuming gum. Rick thought for a moment. He searched his jacket pockets. Barb was right. The urge for smoking was gone. Damn her. One more thing she would rub his nose in. The trip to Mr. Donald J. Martin's home took about 2 hours. Muhammad had insisted the meeting be face-to-face. They had to show Mr. Martin the articles in hard copy, the photos, the graphs, and reports. He had to listen to some of the recordings, and he had to read some of the emails. He was old-fashioned and insisted on feeling paper or listening to speech. He signed contracts with a pen and paid his employees with a personal check. Payroll dealt with taxes, of course, but he wanted to be known to his employees as a boss who paid them out of his own pocket, at least as much out of his own pocket as a billionaire could. Mr. Martin had been nice enough to send Muhammad and Walter a limo. Walt hoped they could leave that way instead of having a call for a cab, which was quite possible. Mr. Martin, when pissed, had been known to show his guests the door and walk away without any parting words. Walter stepped out of the limo. The long, winding path from the front gate to the main house took about 15 minutes. During that time, Walter marveled at the sheer waste of money. Tall oak trees lined either side of the path toward the house, with the road paved in tan yellow bricks. Several years ago, Mr. Martin's oldest daughter finally married. Forrest was there. Muhammad and Vanessa covered the story. Vanessa did photos, while Muhammad wrote the article. The story ran with the title, A Road Paved in Honey, and it looked the part.
Please follow me,
one of Martin's many staffers said, while gesturing toward the main house. Walter walked up the long flight of stairs to 2 tall, massive front doors.
Seriously,
he said out loud. Muhammad nodded.
Money is money. Wait until you see the inside. Welcome to the estate, good sirs,
said a man dressed in a black jacket with rather long tails and black creased trousers. His white shirt seemed too white. It seemed to glow in the sunlight. Walter had to shake his head to snap out of the obvious daze he was in. The doorman smiled. The effect always took the first-timer by surprise.
Welcome to the home,
the doorman said. Walter nodded. He stepped through the doorway and was hit with a sudden case of agoraphobia. The inner foyer was expansive. Tall, thick columns supported vaulted ceilings at least 20 feet high. The floor made of a translucent, reflective material sheened to mimic a deep canyon.
You want me to walk across that?
Muhammad laughed.
The first time I walked through those doors, I nearly passed out. As I said, money is money.
Someone softly coughed behind Walter.
Please, follow me.
Walter and Muhammad followed the man through a passageway off from the main path. The corridor took them through several turns to eventually open up into a modest-sized room. Each wall was covered with books. A solid oak desk was nestled in between 2 tall solid wood bookshelves. Donald J. Martin stood up from the desk. He walked around it and greeted Muhammad warmly with a firm handshake. He turned to Walter.
Mr. Kincaid, so very nice to meet you.
Walter took his hand. The man's hand was cool, almost too cool for his liking. It felt odd to the touch, but Walt returned the firm grip.
Please, have a seat, gentlemen.
Muhammad sat.
Thank you, sir.
He handed a wad of thick envelopes to a staffer waiting. The staffer accepted the material and stepped over to Mr. Martin's desk. He reached into the large envelope and pulled the solid-state drives out first. Next came the plastic backbinder notebooks. He handed those to Martin. The solid-state drives he inserted into the appropriate slots on the side of the desk. Martin sat back in his chair. He listened to the audios while reading through the notebooks. Muhammad and Walter waited quietly. It took Martin about an hour to finish reading all the transcripts, reports, emails, and articles. He looked over to Muhammad, who looked over to the staffer. The man nodded, turned, and walked toward a wet bar off in the corner of the office. A few minutes later, he came back with 2 drinks, a rum and coke for Muhammad and a Cape Cod for Walter. Walter accepted the drink with wide eyes.
How?
He whispered. Mohammed shrugged.
ESP, maybe. Enjoy and relax. Food is next.
Walter frowned.
How would...
Another staffer walked in with a small table. Assorted fruit, vegetables, and small ham, turkey, tofu, and pastrami sandwiches adorned the top. She left the small table between the two and walked out. Mohammed shrugged, smiled, and popped a red grape into his mouth. Martin cleared his throat. Walter and Mohammed looked up.
You know I'm on the board.
Both men nodded.
You also know I have a lot of money invested in Forever Life.
Walter swallowed the thick lump that formed in the middle of his throat. Where was the man going with this, he thought.
And you come here with information that could bring the company to near bankruptcy.
Martin slammed his fist onto the desk. Walter and Mohammed flinched.
What the fuck is wrong with this picture?
Martin yelled. Walter's heart sank. The man was going to kill the story and toss them out. Martin took a deep breath and scratched underneath his chin. He gave the two men a hard stare. Mohammed looked away, but Walter locked his gaze. After a minute, Martin smiled.
Run it,
he said. Walter blurted.
But sir, you can't... Wait, what? Run the series.
Mohammed frowned.
As is, sir. No changes. None. That arrogant son of a bitch will get what he deserves. He muscled me out of the chair, so this is payback. The morning this hits the net, I'll call an emergency meeting.
He laughed out loud.
Can't wait to see that smug look wiped off his face.
Mohammed nodded.
Understood, sir. Damn, this is going to be bittersweet.
Martin reached over and pulled a remote phone from its cradle. He dialed a number and waited a few seconds.
Ted, me, Martin. You still got controlling stock?
He listened for a few minutes.
I got something to boost your ratings. What? How'd you get the info?
He covered the mic part.
One of his guys received a packet last night. Had lots of info on Forever Life in Forrest.
He placed the phone back to his ear.
Yeah, same thing. My guys have worked the angle already. We release tomorrow morning. Yeah. Okay. Not really. Sounds like a good idea. We can do that.
He covered the mic.
Are we ready to release in 1 hour?
Mohammed went wide-eyed. He stammered a second, thought about it, then nodded. Martin smiled.
Yeah, that works. Hey, you heading up to Juneau tomorrow? Want to catch the race? I got the new deck built. You can see the entire course. Good. Meet you up there in 12.
He hung the phone up.
Well, Mohammed, Global Information News is going live in an hour. Make it happen.
Mohammed and Walter nodded. A staffer walked up to the men and gestured toward the door. Walter nearly stumbled out of the chair.
Thank you, sir.
Martin looked up from his computer screen, nodded, and went back to viewing. Walter had to hurry to catch up to Mohammed.
Oh boy,
was his thought. This is gonna get ugly. Interim chapter. Prax stood in front of Omega's chamber.
Is this the best course of action?
Mike answered,
With the current parameters in play, it is. Events have been put in place that there is a conclusion which may require his strength. He has been reconditioned. Will he be independent?
Mike paused for a moment.
He will be.
Pete Walker woke up with a start. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not this place, not this time. He reached up and felt the oxygen mask tightly over his mouth and nose. His hand seemed strangely oversized through the green liquid. Then he remembered he still wasn't supposed to be here. He couldn't. Damn, another failure. He had died. Now he was awake. Pete took a deep breath and tested his eyes. The filtered light had a green tint to it, so the stinging shock of using his eyes for the first time wasn't so overly painful, just maybe annoying. He took another deep breath and tested his hands. Each finger flexed, but they looked grossly huge. Maybe something happened during the cloning process. Hopefully, he thought, he wouldn't be some hulking monstrosity. He looked up at a blinking display board over his head. It flashed, "Purge in progress, please stand by." He looked around and spotted the readout displays to his right. Little monitors flashed and displayed numbers and text. One display was counting down. Another was scrolling odd bits of information like, family is important, protect family at all cost. You have the ability to save lives. It's time to leave, prepare. That he thought odd. He looked over at the monitor that was displaying a countdown of sorts. Then he remembered. Purge in progress. He looked up and saw 2 metal rings. He grabbed them. Seconds later, he felt the floor underneath his feet vanish. The green-tinted fluid slipped away from his eyesight. He remembered the process now. He waited until the fluid completely drained. The system would cycle through several procedures. Purge was first, wash was second, release was third. He counted to 3 and the floor came back. Seconds later, the container he was in filled with some clear fluid. Water, he thought. It was warm and turbulent, like a washing machine. Minutes ticked by as the chamber filled, circulated, and drained several times. The little countdown display kept track and reminded him he was not the original. Intellectually, he understood he was not the original. Waking up in a thick green goo fluid reinforced that too. When the countdown display reached 0, he was hit with a blast of hot air. It whirled around him rapidly. He was dry in seconds. He lowered himself far enough to feel the grid floor and tested his legs. Strong, firm, stable. He let go of the overhead rings, and with his weight fully supported by his feet, he unsnapped his harness. He looked out through the chamber glass and saw an android staring at him. Had he been asleep that long? He heard a loud, audible click, and the glass door whooshed up out of sight. Pete stepped out and felt a chill. He looked down at the android, which seemed strange. From what he could tell, it had to have been at least 6 feet tall. Prax looked up and said,
Welcome to your new life, Omega.
Chapter 18. Kent made Forrest wait 30 minutes before he walked into the diner. He had a trans strip stuck just behind his left ear. Mike could talk to him via bone induction and pick up any sound he heard, near or extremely far. Sarah spotted him, each arm covered in plates with baguette pastrami sandwiches. "Hey, George, over here." Kent kept the smile on his face. With George's memories, he recognized the hostess, Sarah. She was a pretty middle-aged woman who could have easily starred in a porn video featuring MILFs. "I was worried. Are you okay?" He nodded.
Yeah, Sarah, how goes it?
She smiled and visibly relaxed. "Let me drop these off, then I can scare up a seat." Kent spotted Forrest sitting at a booth. A slender man with dark hair sat at the edge of the booth with Forrest in the middle.
Sarah, I'm here to see an associate.
Kent pointed his chin toward Forrest. Sarah turned. "Him? Sure, darlin'. He and his friend had been waiting for 30 minutes. Didn't know you were the one. I'll get your order in a moment." Kent nodded and headed to the horseshoe-shaped booth. Troy stood up as Kent approached. He could see some resemblance. Not identical, but enough to think the 2 men could be related. Kent eyed Troy as he stood. Nice gesture, he thought. A man with some culture. He reached the booth and sat. Troy sat back down. Forrest never moved. On one level, he felt a connection. This man was his brother, and yet he was the enemy. His enemy, me. On a deeper level, he hated the man. No ties, no obligations or responsibilities. He came into the world when technology was just starting to cross that fine line of how special to it's all magic. Sarah stepped up to the table. "What can I finally get you to?" She looked at Troy and Forrest. Forrest spoke.
What's the special?
"Today it's pastrami on French baguette."
Make it 3.
Kent coughed.
Sourdough for me, Sarah.
Sarah did a double take. "You feverish? Sourdough?" Kent nodded.
Today I'd like to do a change-up.
He shrugged and closed his eyes briefly. Sarah smiled. "Sure, darlin'. We need that every now and then. Drinks?"
Water for me,
Kent said. Forrest said,
Same for us.
Kent smiled.
He has a neck, which should contain a voice box. Can't he speak?
Troy said,
I can speak. Water would be fine, ma'am. Thanks.
Sarah pursed her lips. She thought George had worse company over the years, but these two seemed off, not quite comfortable. Water for all. She turned and left.
Well, Alpha, that is not my name,
Forrest said with clenched teeth.
I didn't say it as a name. I said it as a title. There are other names I could use, but Alpha is better.
Forrest cocked an eyebrow.
You'd rather I call you fucker, bastard, asshole? I'd rather you call me by my name, brother. Forrest. I got too much of George's memory to give you that much respect. Alpha. You're lucky I even acknowledge you.
Forrest's face scrunched up in anger. He was about to unleash a torrent of insults when Sarah appeared with the water. Sarah carefully placed the glasses of iced water in front of each man. Kent nodded and said,
Thanks.
But he didn't look at her. The other two remained silent. She noticed the dark-haired one staring intensely at George. She decided this wasn't going to turn out well. Would you gentlemen like something else while Mel fixes your sandwiches? Kent focused on Forrest.
I'm good.
Forrest said nothing, but Troy took his eyes off Kent and said with a smile,
No thanks, ma'am. We're good. But thank you for asking.
Sarah furrowed her eyebrows and nodded. Thompson flashed his hand over the side console. The center display flashed to a new image. Rick, Barbara, Kovic, 2 reps, Keller Parks, and Meg Wilson from the DA watched. The first image showed Pete Walker strapped to a table, sedated. Someone in a level 3 hazmat suit stepped into camera range. Keller was a tall brunette with long hair and long legs. She was the DA. Meg, assistant DA, was about 2 feet shorter, small but solid built. She had blonde hair with dark roots. Keller asked, Has this been authenticated? Thompson nodded.
Confirmed. All the vids have.
Pete screamed, and nearly everyone flinched. Meg looked away from the display. And we confirmed that to be Peter Walker. Thompson nodded.
Face recognition.
And they recorded this.
This vid was hacked.
Meg turned to face Thompson. Forever Life was hacked? The NSA couldn't do it. Smikhov spoke up. Probably an inside job. The PIC's confirm code matched the checksum. This vid came from inside Forever Life, from the building's continuous record feed. That vid was saved as it was happening. It is not a copy in the sense of a copy. There are no other PICs confirm. Keller's left eyebrow raised. You can testify to that? Numbers don't lie. Having one of their security stations in here couldn't have gotten a better vid. What about the source? Thompson, Anisov, and Smikhov shrugged. Thompson said,
It was delivered by a special carrier.
Rick spoke up.
He was sent a key to a locker at the station with a thick envelope of cash and a note. No fingerprints, and everything was void of any DNA.
Annie? Keller interrupted. Thompson said,
None.
Anisov said, Nada. Smikhov finished, Zip. Thompson shrugged.
Seriously, the only DNA found was cross-contam from the carrier and the surrounding area. Even the paper can't be traced.
Meg asked, Ink?
Heat, thermal printing, laser burn.
There was another scream in the background. Keller said, WTF. Anisov said,
Rapid genetic change.
She pointed to the screen. That's disgusting. Pete's arm had ballooned to 3 times its size in seconds. The person in the hazmat suit stuck the bicep with a long, thin needle. Seconds later, the arm shrank to normal, but Pete went into convulsions. A moment later, he stopped moving. The hazmat figure slowly walked over to a panel of buttons and monitors. He looked at a monitor for several seconds, reached out, and pressed a button. Pete's body jerked several times. The individual waited a few more seconds, pressed the button again. Pete's body jerked several more times. The individual stepped away and leaned over Pete's head. His body obstructed the view. Keller asked, What's the timestamp?
8 years ago,
Thompson said. He waved his arm across the console and the vid disappeared.
We have about 2,000 hours of vids, and the emails, hundreds of pages. From the documents, another 5,000 pages. It looks like Forever Life is working on a drug to make phenotype changes in a matter of days.
Barbara blurted, "That's crazy." Thompson hovered his hands, palms up, and acted like he were weighing 2 items.
Maybe, but think about it. You can change your hair color, texture, length, thickness, anything in several days. You want canine teeth? Swallow the pill or take some injection, or both. Need a bigger butt?
He paused when his eyes drifted toward Barbara's rear.
Now it's a choice.
He quickly looked up. Barbara kept a straight face, but the urge to cold cock Thompson was strong.
Forever Life is nuts,
Rick stressed.
Pete died over 15 years ago. I was only several feet away from him. I ID'd the body.
Keller nodded. Okay. Clearly Forever Life has been working above the law. I'll ask for a search warrant. It's gonna be a hard sell. Rick spoke up.
Seriously? With what we just saw? When the DOJ gets wind of this, they'll want a piece of the action, if not all of it.
Keller replied, "Judge Thorpe is on call this week."
Oh,
Rick said.
fuck. He ain't gonna bite the hand that's been feeding him.
Maybe not. I can always take it to the DOJ, but I want this in our court first. We need this takedown, Keller replied. She shrugged. Rick thought election season was another 2 years away. Anisov said,
Thorpe is on record for openly condemning cloning. You know, God, creation, and the whole bag of chips are lady and dip.
Smekov punched him in the arm.
What? All I'm saying is that you can't get any more conservative than Thorpe. I think he'll sign.
Rick's mobile went off. The ringtone was a cackle. His ex-wife.
1 sec.
He pulled it out and looked at the caller ID. It was Sarah. A smile formed on his face. He cleared his throat, and he gave himself some distance from the group.
Pearl speaking.
He hoped he sounded professional.
How can...
Rick, this is Sarah. George is here.
Hey, Sarah. How is... Wait, what?
George is here. Rick placed the device against his shoulder.
George is at the Lotion.
He placed the mobile back on his ear.
Sarah, we'll be there in 20 minutes. For God's sake, keep cool and keep him there.
They got another 10 minutes before Mel finishes making the sandwiches.
They?
He asked. A guy in a very expensive suit with male eye candy next to him.
A redhead?
The eye candy? He has jet black hair. The guy in the suit has the red hair.
OMG,
Rick thought.
On the way. See you in a few.
He clicked off.
I think Forrest is meeting with George.
Smekov held her hand out in front of Anisov. Give. Anisov reached into his inside jacket pocket and pulled out a secured cash card. He slipped it in Smekov's hand. The card disappeared with a smug Smekov smiling. Troy coughed. Forrest and Kent had been staring at one another for the last 3 minutes. Sarah stopped by once to ask if everything was okay. Troy nodded and flashed her a toothy smile. Kent broke the silence first.
You wanted this meeting.
Forrest took a deep breath.
Brother, of which I'm not happy to be.
Forrest's neck muscles tightened. He sucked in his lips.
Transgenetics is safe. Safe now, but how many of us died getting to this point?
Forrest remained silent.
You used one of us as a guinea pig.
Forrest held up a hand. Kent kept his voice low.
Don't try and bullshit me. I've seen the vids on Pete 3. You murdered him, and you got nerve to sit in front of me and act like you're a victim of bad PR.
He scrunched his face up in disgust.
How? How can I possibly forgive you for that? Shut the fuck up, you bastard. I'm still talking, and you got little to atone your sins. I will do everything I can to take you and Forever Death down. Your transgenocide is the wrong answer.
Kent exhaled. Forrest measured Kent with a careful eye. Atrocities against who? Another clone? This was the big picture. Global change. Universal change. Everyone would be affected. Disease, illness, crippling handicaps, erased. Couldn't he see it? This is a service to humankind. This is the needs of the many, not the few. Epic.
You're a fool. Now you shut the fuck up. It's my turn.
Kent leaned forward.
No, you had your rant. You, George, all the others, and Pete lacked vision. Your myopic view wasn't going to liberate the world anytime soon. Short-sighted, narrow-minded bullshit. All of it. I'm offering the world, liberation from everything. Everything. Not just cosmetic, but everything. You sit there and try to threaten me? How fucking dare you? You're just another piece of cheap life, clone. 3 months worth of wasted time.
Sarah stepped up with a forced smile. She placed the sandwiches on the table, dropped napkins next to each plate, and backed away slowly. She overheard, like others in the diners, some of the argument. In all these years, she assumed she knew George. She liked him. He seemed nice. Sure, he had arguments with Joe, but Joe was an asshole. But this man he was talking to? This was different. This was raw. Forrest slammed his hand down on the table.
I should never have come. You're just as hard-headed as George.
Kent leaned forward.
You pompous, sanctimonious ass. The base gene is ours. Corrected. Bullshit. It has not been corrected. It's the same as day one. How would you know? I got access to everything.
Shocked, Forrest sat speechless. He frowned.
Everything?
Kent leaned back.
Everything. Minute 1. Understand? Minute 1.
Forrest clenched his teeth. His lips stretched thin, showing his incisors and canines.
What do you want?
Kent leaned forward. He lowered his head and looked Forrest in the eye.
Abandon transgenetics.
Forrest sucked in air loudly.
Or at least come up with a way to use the host's DNA as the base. Impossible.
Forrest spat out.
That would price the treatment out of range to 85% of the population. And?
Forrest shook his head.
Transgenetics is for the masses, who will line the pockets on shareholders and increase your wealth. And I know about the hidden sequence. What hidden sequence?
Kent cocked his head to the right and smiled.
Created in his image.
Forrest sat in silence for a moment.
What are you talking about? You sick fuck. Repeated usage eventually changes the facial phenotype. That's the base gene used.
Forrest slipped out from the booth.
I'm done with you, clone. You better enjoy this meal. You threatening me?
Forrest laughed and caught the attention of everyone in the diner. He stepped away from the booth, with Troy following close behind. As he passed Sarah, he handed her a wad of Fed notes.
That should cover the meal and tip.
Sarah quickly counted out several hundred Fed notes. She pulled out 2 20 notes and started to hand the wad back, but it was too late. Forrest and Troy were on the other side of the door. Kent stared at his sandwich. The war was on. Forrest would try to murder him now. That was clear. He avoided eye contact with mostly everyone in the diner. At times, he knew Forrest and himself had been carelessly loud, but that was good. Witnesses. And witnesses meant allies. Kent softly said,
Mike, any news?
He absently rubbed at the induction strip behind his ear. Mike said,
The van, with some of Forrest's security units, is headed to your location. I think it's time to leave then. 2 detectives are also approaching the diner.
Kent raised an eyebrow.
Really? They want to question you, or I should clarify, they want to question George.
Kent took a bite from his sandwich. He chewed slowly and decided that sourdough was also a good choice.
Can you delay the security units? Already done. How much time do we have? As much as you need. Security units have been taken care of. May I ask how?
Kent asked after swallowing another bite.
You may ask,
Mike said. Kent took 2 more bites before saying,
How?
Mike appreciated the position he was in. If he had been human, he would have laughed.
You asked, Kent.
Kent smiled. So, Mike really is human after all, he thought.
Understood.
Mike concluded the laugh would have been a very satisfying one. Barbara pulled the car into the Lotion's parking area, her mind still racing over what they saw down the road. They would have made it sooner, but the accident required they stop and offer assistance. She looked over to Rick, who was going through his own thoughts. How do you explain a heavy cargo van crushed, with no witnesses, not even camera surveillance coverage? Every single camera that could have seen the accident malfunctioned, switched off, or had been pointed in a different direction. What were the odds, she thought? The cameras were working now, but at that very moment of the accident, nothing. And the security units in the van, all crushed like squeezed clay with their heads removed and backup recorders missing. Now they sat in the car, engine still running. Division had dispatched a team, and Thompson and his group were on the way. She and Rick only left when a patrol car, which heard the call over the comm, pulled up. She turned the engine off. "Ready?" Rick nodded. He hoped George and Forrest were still there. Kent was 2 bites into the second half of his sandwich when he heard Sarah. "Detectives, how are you?" she said. "We're a bit full. Care to wait for a seat?"
Rick cleared his throat. That would be nice, but maybe you can help us.
"Yes?"
He pulled out the pic of George he showed her a week ago. Have you seen this person before?
Sarah was glad Rick pulled the pic out. She so hated calling him. She pretty much felt like she ratted George out. "Oh, yeah, I have. Is he in trouble or something?" Kent concealed his smile by taking another bite. Rick said,
Not at all. We just have some questions. He may be able to help us with an ongoing investigation.
Total bullshit spiel flashed through Rick's mind. Oscar performance. "In that case, he's over here." She walked toward Kent, with Rick and Barbara following. When she reached the table, she said, "George, sorry to bother you, but—" Kent turned around.
It's okay, Sarah. I heard. Thanks for making sure things were cool.
He stood up and faced Rick and Barbara.
Detectives, how may I be of assistance?
Barbara eyed him carefully. He looked like Pete Walker. Rick could only stare. This was the face, albeit a little younger, he remembered from more than 15 years ago. Mike said through the induction strip,
They know you are not George. They've seen some of the Pete 3 vids.
Kent, to his credit, kept a straight face. Mike had to have sent some vids to the police. No doubt he was holding out on what secret agenda he had running. Kent was beginning to think there really was more to Mike.
Join me, please.
He gestured to the empty space around the booth. The 2 sandwiches were still there.
Have lunch with me.
Sarah said, His guest left early. The sandwiches are paid for. Mel yelled from the back.
Order.
Sarah touched Kent lightly on the shoulder and left. Barbara and Rick looked at one another.
Their names are Rick Pearl and Barbara Tipper,
Mike said.
Please, Kent started. Detectives Pearl and Tipper, we have much to discuss.
Rick said,
How did?
Kent shrugged.
ESP.
His smile was genuine. They hesitated.
The sandwiches are delicious. Who are you?
Rick asked as he sat down.
My name is Kent. May I call you Rick, Rick?
The detective nodded.
Who is this?
He slid the pic over.
George Walker, my brother.
Brother, Barbara said. She lowered her voice. And not a clone?
Depends on your definition.
He took another bite.
Forrest is the only true clone. I'm not. And no genetic testing in the world will disprove that.
Barbara leaned forward. She had half a sandwich in her hand, and after giving it a good sniff, she tasted a small edge. She paused and took a bigger bite. You know about forever life?
Of course. We were created to fight Forrest.
He sighed and looked toward a corner of the ceiling.
I'm the last of the Pete lookalikes.
Barbara swallowed and took another bite, normal-sized. This is good. Rick scowled.
We're not here to eat.
I'm hungry, and it's paid for.
And we have a case. To solve.
Kent finished.
I figured that much. Was Forrest here?
Rick asked. Kent nodded.
His sandwich is in front of you.
He smiled.
He didn't like what I had to say and left.
Rick stared down at the sandwich. He liked pastrami. He caught Sarah's eye and waved her over. "Yes, hun?" she said. He liked the sound of that, but she said hun to everyone.
A Bell's, please.
She nodded and looked at Barbara. "Are the drinks covered too?" Sarah nodded. "The 10-credit shake then. Kiwi lime." "Good choice. My favorite too. And you, George?"
I'll have a Bell's too.
Sarah turned and left. Kent noticed Rick watching her retreat intensely.
You asked her out yet?
Rick snapped out of his daze.
What? You asked her out yet?
Rick frowned.
WTF? You two?
Barbara stifled a laugh. "Look, this is weird. We've only known you for all of 5 minutes. And you seem to be personable." Kent visibly relaxed.
A common enemy usually creates a united front and...
"Are we really after the same ends?" Barbara asked.
I think so, though our methods might differ.
He took the last bite of his sandwich. Sarah dropped off the drinks and waited on a new customer.
You gonna blow yourself up?
Rick asked while chewing his bite.
Not me, but George had 6 years of frustration. Maybe if this doesn't pan out soon, I might have to consider that route.
"Why? Why do this?" Barbara asked. Kent took a sip of his Bell's. He savored the pleasant taste with just that right amount of bitter aftertaste.
You saw the vids?
Rick and Barbara nodded.
There are also other reasons. Transgenetics will eventually cause inbreeding. That is, if it is available to the masses at an affordable price. Plus, there is an Easter egg in the sequence.
"Such as?" Rick asked. Kent smiled and took another swallow of Bell's.
Good choice, Rick. I like this beer. The Easter egg. I like my face, but think of it. A world where we all look the same. Global equality. A solution to racism. The only thing left to discriminate is belief and not looks. A path to utopia.
Barbara said, "Wait, what? Are you talking about a drug?"
Yeah. See a doctor. Talk to a genetic consultant. Take a series of pills. Go into a coma. And days later, magic. A new you. Literally. It is big, but he's going about it the cheapest way possible. And that is,
Rick asked,
using a base genetic code.
The beer went down smoothly as he took another swallow.
Ours. What exactly do you mean a new you?
Kent looked Rick in the eye.
You like your eye color? Want to change it? How about your height? A little too thick around the midsection? Hate your hair? Your voice, your face, flat butt, big butt, no chest, too much chest, bad memory, cancer, hay fever, the cold. We are talking epic changes here. Nothing will eventually be left untouched. Nothing. What's wrong with that?
Kent finished his beer. It was time for him to go.
Using your own DNA? Nothing. Using a base DNA? Everything. Short term, it would be fine, but long term and inclusive of a huge population? Inbreeding or sterility, your choice. It all comes down to profit. Make 100 million or make hundreds of billions. And that would be his cut.
He picked up a napkin and dabbed at his lips.
It's been fun, but I have to leave.
Rick grabbed Kent's arm as he started rising.
Sorry, but I'd like you to talk to the DA.
Kent brushed the hand off.
Am I being charged? If so, on what?
Barbara blurted out, "Conspiracy. The act of committing conspiracy." Kent laughed.
Seriously? This is too big for you to walk away,
Rick stressed. Then suddenly, he was hit in the face with a piece of shortbread cake. Barbara said, "What the?" before being hit with an apple pie. Rick wiped his eyes in time to see a short man jump up on a table. Marty tossed the cake first. He giggled as Rick's head snapped back from the impact, and his partner was taken by complete surprise. Pearl threw the pie at Barbara. It hit dead center nose. He jumped up onto his table and yelled, "Food fight!" A moment later, Rick and Barbara stood alone save for Sarah, who was not touched, and 2 other waitstaffs were covered in food. Mel stepped out from the kitchen. He was a large, stocky man with thinning hair and a dark complexion coming over tanning. He yelled,
"What in the hell is going on?"
The entire dining area was awash with food. Sarah shrugged and walked over to Rick. Rick spat out a piece of cake.
WTF.
Then his phone beeped. He answered.
Pearl here.
It was the chief. The search warrant was ready. Chapter 19. The security team missed check-in. That worried Forrest. He sat at his desk and checked an anonymous mess box. Nothing. The van and the units were unmarked and comfortably untraceable. Only an unfortunate and careless cross-contamination would tie in one of his contractors, who could eventually point to his desk. Troy chimed the door. He chimed several more times within several seconds. Forrest, irritated, pressed the enter button. Troy hurried over. The look on his face told Forrest something was wrong.
Sir, Channel 7. Important. All bad news.
Strange. Forrest had never seen Troy flustered. He clicked the main display screen. It was a 190-inch flat screen unit secured against a vacant portion of the far wall. The display flicked on and caught the newscaster in mid-speech. CEO Forrest Taylor is alleged in a conspiracy to release a highly controversial drug known as Transgenetics. Currently set for human trials, the FDA has placed a hold on the go-ahead. Forrest's heart sank.
No. Sir, more bad news.
He handed Forrest a tablet. The Watcher Group released a special report on the dangers of gene therapy. A headline article ID'd key players in transgenetics development. It accused Forever Life in conducting illegal, deadly human trials. Several photos showed Pete Walker's face twisted in agony. Forrest got up and went to the window. He could see the flashing lights of division vehicles convoying to the main gate. Forrest made a mental note to stop all donations to Thorpe's future campaign. The lead car stopped. Someone got out and approached the guard station. Seconds later, the officer had the guard in a chokehold, while another one worked the controls to open the large steel gate. Another officer approached the two and slapped handcuffs on the guard. The convoy resumed its way to the main entrance of the building. Forrest's phone rang. The caller ID said, Martin. Bastard, he thought. Forrest sat at his desk.
Troy, handle division, please.
Troy's facial expression said it all. Doomed. He nodded and left. Forrest picked up the handset.
Donald.
Martin replied,
Forrest, the board held an emergency meeting. Sorry to have to give you the news. We voted you out. Under Clause 12, Section 4, Item A3, you will not receive a parachute option. You set me up, you bastard. How could you?
Martin replied, You may blame me, but it was your own ignorance that did it. You have 8 hours to take what you need.
How could you take us down this? Take us. You signed off on transgenetics. But not torture and murder.
Forrest remained silent. Martin continued.
You took us down a road that'll cut deep in profit. Tomorrow morning, the exchanges will happen. Every investor will sell. We'll drop, and you are to blame. You no longer have access to company files.
Forrest tapped out several commands on his computer. All came up, access denied. He hung up. No use in talking. He walked over to the wet bar and poured a half glass of cognac. Lime juice, sparkling water, and several black olives completed the drink. He finished in 3 swallows. He walked out of his office, past Troy's unoccupied desk. His private elevator would not respond to his palm press, so he was forced to use the public lift. He pressed Garage PRV and was thankful that the elevator made the trip without anyone requesting a stop. Today, he would take one of his private cars home.
Sid,
he thought. His lawyer. He's going to have to call Sid. Sid was the best and could have gotten Jesus out of a jam if he had been there. Several security units were waiting near his car. He sighed.
Good. At least they're allowing me to have some protection on the way home.
As he got nearer to his car, one unit stepped out and blocked his way.
Please, sir, I have to ask you to wait.
Forrest scowled.
Wait for what?
The unit said,
You are to be held until head of security has a chance to clear you. Clear? Clear me? What the fuck? Clear me?
The other unit stepped forward. A second unit said,
Sir, display any further acts of aggression and you will be pacified.
Forrest was shocked.
Aggression?
The unit stepped closer. Forrest closed his mouth, and he held his hands up to his chest with palms facing out. The unit stopped. Forrest waited 10 minutes until the evening chief of security arrived with several other units.
Sorry, sir, but the chairman— I'm the chairman. The interim chairman said to search you for any company property. Please spread your legs and lift up your arms, sir.
A now red-faced Forrest complied. The search was quick, but degrading. Afterward, he got into his car.
Sir, the main entrance is choked full of reporters. I suggest the service entrance.
Forrest bit his bottom lip, nodded, and sped toward the service entrance. Disgraced, tears welled up in his eyes and started streaming down his cheek. He pulled up next to the intercom/gate access unit. His card wouldn't work. He tried several more times. Then he pressed the call button. A minute later, a voice came over the unit's speakers.
Yes? This is Forrest Taylor. I need to leave.
The gate remained closed.
I need to leave. Open the gate, goddammit.
The gate remained closed. Forrest roared and punched at the ceiling several times. He took a deep breath and begrudgingly said,
Please, I just want to get home.
After several seconds, the gate opened. Forrest drove up the path to the main road. Several division cars were blocking the intersection. Forrest stopped as an officer approached him. A detective walked up to the car.
Mr. Taylor, please turn off the engine and step out.
Forrest let the window down.
Detective, why are you stopping me? I'm a citizen.
The detective nodded.
Understood, sir, but I still need you to step out.
Forrest put his window back up.
How dare they?
He yelled to no one in particular while punching in the number to Sid.
I'll sue the company. I'll sue division. Everyone.
A deep voice answered.
Feinberg, speaking. Sid, this is Forrest. I need— Forrest,
Sid interrupted.
Where are you?
The detective knocked on the car window. He moved his lips, but Forrest heard nothing.
In my car. I'm being detained. Division officers and a detective are blocking my way home.
The detective knocked on the window harder. It thumped and startled Forrest.
Sid, this is a disaster. I heard. You what? Heard? How? Forrest, it's all over the news and the net feeds. Is it true?
Forrest pursed his lips.
Is it true? God help you if it is. Some,
he finally said.
Sheesh, Forrest. You can fix this. Forrest, look, this is not looking good. You need to turn yourself in and—
A very loud thump hit the window. The officers were using a battering ram. Thump, thump.
Sid, they're trying to break into my car. Call someone. Forrest, turn yourself in. The fuck I will. You have to. You're a private citizen away from the company.
Then it hit Forrest. Out in the open. Vulnerable. He had no security units for protection.
Sid, I'm scared. I'm making a call to the mayor and the division chief, but it's going to take time. Doing it now before it's too late.
There were several more thumps. Forrest considered running, but that would have been dumb. He turned off the engine and lowered the window a bit.
Okay, I'm stepping out. Please don't hurt me.
The officers backed up, allowing the car door to open.
Sid, for God's sake, hurry.
Then he said,
Car, record mode.
The vehicle beeped. A computer voice said loudly, Vehicle is in record mode. Vehicle is in record mode. Forrest only hoped that would be enough to guarantee not being shot by a division officer.
I'm stepping out.
The detective let him clear the car. He took a deep breath.
Mr. Taylor, I have a warrant for your arrest. What's the charge? Fraud, kidnapping, assault, murder. Please turn around and place your hands on top of your head.
Forrest started to turn around when his knees buckled. The detective caught him and pressed him hard against his car. He placed restraining straps around Forrest's wrists. It was a nightmare, Forrest thought. A true nightmare. He looked up and saw a few helicopters hovering overhead. 3 were division. The other half-dozen were from news agencies. Prax had finished passing out the bags of popcorn and drinks when Mike started the compilation. He had been recording all the major news channels and spliced the best of the broadcast together. A live feed picture was nestled in the corner of the large display when someone yelled,
Look, they got him cornered.
The feed played out the moment Forrest's car was stopped by division, the battering ram on the window, and Forrest finally arrested. The display zoomed in close on a teary-eyed face as the detective placed restraining bands around his wrists. Marty said,
Now what? This is over, right?
Mike said,
Not quite. I've established IDs for everyone, as well as history, medical records, residencies, education, everything that will allow you to function as regular citizens.
Pearl asked, What about work?
Taken care of. The documents division has in their possession, financial records that shows Forever Life had been paying you a living stipend for your earlier participation in the illegal Transgenetics program. George and I had discussed the possibility of executing his plan.
Jackie said,
And these residencies? All our hidden entrances and exits are within each of your units. Nanobots and remote units have been mimicking normal life patterns. Everything will show normal wear and tear through normal usage.
Mike? Kent started.
You can do that?
There was a long pause. Everyone waited.
Yes. What do we do now?
Morgan asked. Silence hung awkwardly in the air.
Live,
Mike said.
But tonight, you may stay up and watch vids.
Kent laughed first, followed by everyone else. Epilogue. 1 week later. Kent sat at the main computer console. The past week had been a blur of sorts. Crazy party nights with restful, lazy days. The news broadcast was still abuzz with the Forever Life scandal. Forrest had tried to commit suicide, but failed miserably. He was now on suicide watch 24/7. There had been lots of talks between his brothers and sisters of late. He figured they were all adjusting to the fact that they were free to consider the next stage in their lives. He, personally, liked the lazy, do-nothing lifestyle, but he sensed Becky wanted something else. She told him that she took another month off from work. Nice job, he thought. Then he realized he didn't have to work, period. Pete was wealthy, and thus all his brothers and sisters were wealthy. Royalty still rolled into the Pete Walker estate.
Mike?
Yes, Kent.
Prax has been stacking boxes in the main area. Each person has several boxes with their names on them. What is happening? Time to start your new lives. You're kicking us out? I am. I've had weeks to adjust. What about the others? I've already spoken with each. They agreed to instruction transfers, everything needed, including backstories. How come I never had that option? Would it have made a difference?
Kent thought about that.
I suppose not, but I do get some backstory transferred. Of course. Something else has been bothering me. Yes. Alpha was not the first, was he?
Mike paused several moments.
Kent, Pete never died,
Mike said. Kent nodded. Of course.
You removed that part of the memory. I had to work in the background.
Kent thought. A man who could create clones, transfer memories and life moments, would have first probably experimented with artificial intelligences.
That was the something that nagged at me all this time?
Mainly that.
Mainly. Should I continue to call you Mike?
It is Mike, sir.
Long ago, I realized I am my own person, so I chose the name Mike. I thought it necessary to hide that fact. Please forgive me. Things required I not be part of the equation.
Kent nodded.
Now what? As I mentioned earlier, we live. We live free-willed, free-spirited. What about 18?
A deep voice said,
I am right here.
Kent nearly jumped from his seat. He turned around and saw a sharply dressed Omega. Omega smiled.
Don't worry, I'm not going to destroy everything. Mike reconditioned me. You took care of the security units?
Omega nodded.
I didn't see your name on any of the boxes. I'm not leaving.
And why is that? Kent asked.
Someone has to take care of 19 and 20.
What? More of us? Mike replied, They will live normal lives. Here. Marty coughed at the doorway. Kent turned to face him. Marty said,
Kent, we are all in the main assembly room. We need to talk.
Kent sat there with his jaw slacked.
You aren't surprised at seeing Omega?
He shook his head.
At first, yeah.
Kent got up and followed Marty to the assembly area. Everyone was there.
So I am the last to know.
Marty said,
Yeah, but we all wanted to talk first. We agree with Mike. We need to start our own lives.
But Kent started to protest.
We are a family. We have to stick together.
Becky stepped up next to Kent. She placed her hand over his and moved it to her heart. He felt the reassuring beating and relaxed. Jackie spoke up.
Some of us were thinking about going off-world and...
Kent exclaimed,
Off-world?
Half the room nodded. Jackie continued.
And why not? Earth has a few more centuries left, but we have always wanted to travel in space.
Kent protested.
Yes, but...
His voice trailed off. He'd always wanted to explore space.
But...
Becky gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. He looked into her eyes.
And you?
She nodded. Kent sighed deeply.
But... Marty?
Marty shrugged.
I'll be staying here. This time period is good for little people. I got cash in a bank account, a nice place to live, an autonomous car, my own android waiting for me. I don't have to work. Besides, I have to stay here for Forrest's trial. I used to be 5'10".
He laughed. Gretel walked up to Kent. Dad?
Dad?
She nodded. There's something else. Actually, a few things. Becky, Hans, Mike, and myself discussed this. I think you should sit. Kent took the nearest chair.
Okay, give.
Mike said,
George took on a middle name.
Yes?
It was Kent. Seriously? Very serious, which made it very easy to change the records. What records?
Mike said,
I accessed all the necessary files and updated them to show George changed his primary name to Kent. The marriage certificate shows Kent Walker now.
Kent exclaimed,
Wait, what? Legally changed?
He turned to Becky.
Married? As in you and me? Why didn't you tell me?
She said, Kent, I didn't want that hammer to hover over your head. In the beginning, I wanted to, but after discussing it with Mike, decided not to tell you. He was prepared to file our divorce papers and allow you to pursue any love interest you wanted.
That's another piece of information missing. Any more?
The entire room fell silent.
Well?
Becky placed Kent's hand over her heart again. You feel my heart? He nodded.
Very strong.
She said, Who made Prax? Kent thought a moment.
George did. I supposed.
He couldn't remember.
From one of his vids, he said he wanted to build an android. Wait.
He pulled his hand away. Becky said, Pete built Prax. Kent placed his hand back over her heart.
But your skin, tongue, taste, smell, hair.
All real. Even my womb. But think about it. Mike is made first. Praxis is second. Clones are third. Combine all three. Kent took a deep breath. AIs, androids, clones.
Your brain?
Real. But the records will show that I had a brain tumor as a child, and a radical experiment saved my life by replacing my brain stem with an artificial stem. The records will also show that all my bones have a porous metal interior. She shrugged. Other than those two things, everything is organic.
Organoid?
Becky corrected him. Human, please. Though cyborg would be more accurate. Kent slowly nodded.
Human,
he said slowly. Human, yes. Hold on to that. Becky, he loved beyond words. His soulmate. Human, yes. She was. Every inch of her lovely body. Human. He could feel the heartbeat. Strong. What a perfect family this was going to be.
When do we leave to start our new life, wife of mine?
Becky smiled, and tears started running down her cheeks. It started the day you said, "Hi, Becky. My name is Kent. Nice to know you. I used to be a clone. Now I am my own person." The end.
Thank you for listening to Enemy Me. Please like this video and subscribe to the Whimsical Node channel for more captivating tales. Your support allows us to continue producing human-written audio stories with human narrators for most. And for the perfect soundtrack to your adventures, remember that a version of the theme song is available now on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, YouTube Music, and many more music streaming services. Just search for the artist group Whimsical Savages and their debut album, Echoes in the
I
Void.
look in the mirror and I see